How Japan built an economy that doesn't need to beg. In 1945, Japan was ash. Not metaphorically, literally. 67 of its cities had been bombed into rubble. Its navy was at the bottom of the Pacific. Its currency was so worthless that people burned it for warmth. A nation of 80 million people stood in the ruins of everything they had built, with nothing left but the habits inside them. 40 years later, Japan was the second largest economy on Earth. No oil, no vast mineral reserves, no colonial extraction, no geographic advantage that other nations didn't also possess. Just people. And the particular way those people thought about work, about making things, about value, and about what it means to rebuild something from nothing. This is not a story about policy. It is not a story about interest rates or trade agreements, or the decisions made in rooms where ordinary people are not invited. This is a story about a nation whose economic identity was shaped, quietly, invisibly, at the level of culture, by the same instincts that live inside a Japanese household budget, the same instincts that make a woman write every yen in a notebook, the same instincts that make a factory worker stop an entire production line because a single bolt is slightly misaligned. It is the story of a country that decided, collectively and without announcement, that it would rather build than borrow, create rather than consume, and endure rather than collapse. To understand what Japan built, you have to understand what it refused. After the war, the obvious path for a devastated nation was dependency. Accept foreign aid. Import foreign goods. Build an economy on the outside world's generosity and gradually, painfully, work your way towards self-sufficiency over generations. Japan accepted some aid. It was not proud about survival. But at the same time, something older and deeper was operating underneath the reconstruction. A cultural reflex so ingrained it didn't need to be named as a strategy. The Japanese concept of monozukuri. The word means simply the art of making things. But inside those 4 syllables lives an entire philosophy. That the act of making something, truly making it, with care, with precision, with attention to every detail that most people would never notice, is not merely economic activity. It is a form of honor, a form of self-expression, a form of respect paid to the person who will eventually use what you made. A Toyota worker in the 1950s who tightened a bolt on an engine was not just doing a job. He was, in the framework his culture gave him, making a promise. That this thing would not fail. That the person who trusted it with their safety would not be betrayed. This sounds philosophical. It was also devastatingly practical, because products built with that level of care do not need to be recalled. Do not generate lawsuits. Do not erode the trust of customers who came back, because the last thing you made was worth coming back for. Quality in Japan was never just a competitive strategy. It was a moral position. There is a practice inside Japanese manufacturing called Kaizen. It translates as continuous improvement, but that translation strips the soul from it. Kaizen is not a corporate initiative. It is not a quarterly goal set by a management team and forgotten by February. It is a daily, personal, almost spiritual commitment to finding the one small thing that could be done better today than it was done yesterday. In a Toyota factory, any worker, regardless of rank, can stop the entire production line if they spot a problem. Not just are allowed to, are expected to, because the cost of one defective car reaching a customer is understood to be far greater than the cost of stopping 10,000 cars for an hour. This is a radical idea inside any organizational culture. It means the person with the least institutional power is trusted with the most institutional responsibility. It means the gap between the floor worker and the executive is not one of importance, but of function. And it produced something remarkable, a workforce that was not merely compliant, but genuinely invested. Workers who saw the quality of what they made as an extension of their own character, who could not psychologically let something imperfect pass through their hands without at least trying to make it right. Multiply that instinct across millions of workers, across decades, across an entire industrial economy, and you begin to understand how a country with no natural resources built things the entire world chose to buy. But there is something even deeper underneath Kaizen, the Japanese relationship with time. In most modern economies, time is a cost. Every hour of production is an expense to be minimized. Speed is efficiency. Efficiency is profit. The logic is clean, and it produces a particular kind of economy, one that is fast, cheap, and structurally indifferent to quality beyond the minimum threshold that keeps customers from leaving. Japan developed a different relationship, one shaped not by quarterly reports but by centuries of craftsmanship culture. The swordsmith who spent months on a single blade, the ceramicist who considered a slightly imperfect bowl to be a failure worth starting over, the carpenter who joined wood without a single nail because the joint, done correctly, would hold longer than the nail would last. These were not economic decisions. They were expressions of a value system in which the relationship between maker and made thing was one of responsibility that extended through time. The thing you made would outlast you. It would be used by people you would never meet. And the quality of it, its honesty, its durability, its faithfulness to its purpose, was a reflection of who you were. When this instinct migrated into industrial manufacturing, it became something the rest of the world had no immediate framework to compete with. Not because Japan had better machines, but because Japan had workers who cared about the machine's output in a way that cannot be manufactured by incentive structures alone. It had to be inherited, felt, understood as something larger than a paycheck. There is a word in Japanese, shokunin, that describes a master craftsman or artisan, but it means something more specific than skill. A shokunin is someone who has dedicated their life to a single craft, not in pursuit of fame or wealth, but in pursuit of mastery for its own sake. The sushi chef who has spent 30 years perfecting the temperature of his rice. The knife maker who has sharpened 10,000 blades in a single lifetime. The lacquerware artist who applies 40 layers of finish over 3 months because 39 is not enough. These people are not anomalies in Japanese culture. They are celebrated. They are considered national living treasures, literally, in some cases, designated by the government as ningen kokuho, human national treasures, people whose mastery of a craft is considered part of the country's cultural inheritance. Think about what that communicates to a society. That the highest form of human achievement is not wealth, not fame, not power, but the perfection of a single, humble, useful skill. That the fisherman who has spent 50 years learning the ocean is as worthy of reverence as the politician who spent 50 years learning to navigate the halls of power. A culture that believes this produces a different kind of worker, a different kind of economy. One built not on the extraction of maximum value in minimum time, but on the creation of genuine value that compounds slowly, invisibly, over the kind of time frames that quarterly capitalism cannot see or measure. This is where the personal and the national become the same story. The Japanese household that saves before spending. The factory worker who stops the line for a single defective bolt. The sushi chef who spends a decade learning to cook rice before he is trusted with fish. The ceramicist who destroys a nearly perfect bowl. These are not separate phenomena. They are the same cultural instruction, operating at different scales. Do not waste. Do not cut corners. Do not trade long-term integrity for short-term convenience. Build things, whether they are objects, finances, skills, or reputations, that will hold, that will last, that will still be standing when the person who built them is gone. This is what Japan did with its economy. It built things that would last. And when the rest of the world needed things that lasted, it came to Japan. Not because Japan had cheaper labor. Eventually it didn't. Not because Japan had abundant resources, it never did. But because what Japan made could be trusted. And trust in an economy is the only currency that cannot be printed. There is a quiet irony in Japan's economic story. A country with no oil became one of the world's most powerful economies by making things from oil. Its factories consumed enormous quantities of the resource it didn't have, transformed it into products, and sold those products at a margin that reflected not just the material cost, but the human intelligence, the accumulated craftsmanship, the Kaizen-honed precision that went into making them. Japan learned, almost by necessity, that the value of a thing is almost never in its raw material. It is in what human attention and human care can transform that material into. A lump of steel is worth very little. A precisely engineered engine component made with zero tolerance for error, trusted with a family's safety, is worth considerably more. The difference between those two things is not chemistry, it is culture. What Japan understood, at the national level and in the kitchen drawer where the notebook is kept, is that wealth is not found. It is made, slowly, carefully, with attention paid to the details that nobody else is watching closely enough to see. The rest of the world looked at Japan rising from ash and called it a miracle. Economists wrote papers. Governments sent delegations to study the factories, the management systems, the organizational charts. But the delegations mostly missed the thing that actually mattered, because it wasn't in the factories. It was in the culture that produced the workers who built the factories. It was in the mother who wrote every yen in a notebook, in the father who took pride in a job done to a standard nobody required of him but himself, in the child who learned, with a small weekly allowance and no safety net, that money is finite and choices are real. It was in the particular Japanese understanding that how you do a small thing is how you do everything. That the bolt, tightened correctly when no one is watching, is the engine of everything that comes after. Japan did not build an economy that doesn't need to beg by accident. It built it one careful, honest, unglamorous act at a time. And the country that rose from the ash didn't rise because of what it had. It rose because of what it refused to be careless about.